My hand's better. You know, before recording, went out and walked the dog, and it ran very fast, and so did I, and then proceeded to trip me up. So that was fun. You know, I ran this game about 2 times in my existence over the course of a year, and I didn't buy any of it. I just used a PDF. I'm sorry, Gary Gygax, please don't kill me. But now I have the physical book, the Roll20 game, and the D&D Beyond game. So that makes up for it or something. That's like 100 quid, okay. But, hello, welcome to a video that I don't know the title of, but you do. We don't have a title for the channel either. Just for all of you, this is a comprehensive guide on the official campaign made by D&D called Waterdeep Dragon Heist. It's probably one of my favourites to ever run. It's only levels 1 to 5, which is piss poor, but it's spread out so far and there's so much the players can do, and it's real nice, and I'll gush about it a lot during this, okay? Like a lot, because it's very cool. One of the things I really like about this is that it has 4 main villains that all get involved in the plot in some way, but at chapter 4 you decide which one is going to come specifically and kick the party's ass, slash let the party kick their ass, slash have a wild goose chase. There's a lot going on in this campaign, and it is perfect for a beginner who wants to do a little bit of everything in the game, because there really is a little bit of everything for everyone. So there's your classic dungeon crawls. There's big old dungeons for people to go through and loot and have a bit of fun there. There's so many people. The appendix for it has about, God, I don't know, bloody 30, 40 NPC stat blocks just for like people, which is mental, and some of them are very cool. Most of them you probably won't use in a playthrough. Because depending on what the party may do, they get involved with some people and they don't get involved with some others. There's a bloody lot to do, and for a DM it's very fun, and for the players it's very fun, and I highly recommend it. So this video series about it is generally for a DM on how to run this. This video series assumes that you have somewhat of an understanding of the rules, and that you are perhaps at some level of experience, be it you've played the game once, or you've been DMing for 87 years, which is, there doesn't seem to be much of an in-between. So, I'll be discussing quite a few things. There's some alliances, there's some guilds, there's the NPCs that I mentioned earlier, there's going to be, I'll talk about the encounters, I'll talk about how to set up a scenario, and they'll all be in separate videos. Right now we're doing the one that I mentioned last, setting up a scenario. Which we'll get onto in a second. You know what it is because you read the title. So, a few pointers before it begins. I'm not going to repeat this again, so listen closely. Otherwise, I am going to take a ruler and I am going to thwack you in the butt. What you want to do is, don't worry about reading the whole thing. Waterdeep Dragon Heist, at least chapter 1 and 2, you don't need to know shit about the setting. It's literally just you're going from one place to another, doing some investigation work, and unless your party suddenly decides to be going like, okay, we're gonna go and, you know, not care about this, and we're gonna go do everything else but the story, thank you very much, that's when you start getting annoyed and realizing that maybe you should have. But if you don't have a party that does that, great, you don't need to read crap. Around chapter 3 is when I'd recommend turning near the back of the book, where there's a handy little description thing about the entire place. It has holidays, it has currency, it has all the different streets, and it's written by Volo himself, who actually shows up in this campaign, which is pretty neat. The game is pretty linear, and people start crying and screaming when the word linear is brought up in D&D, but it's probably the best sort of linear. It's there's a railroad, and it takes players from 1 to 5 in the city of Waterdeep and doesn't have anything for outside of it, and they go from one place to the next, and they do have downtime and they have breaks and they get a nice little manor where they can do whatever they want. They can turn it into a tavern, they can go and work for various alliances, but it always comes back to the big old story in the middle. Even though this railroad has about 50 different tracks that will get you to the same place. And that's how a flipping railroad is done. So if you're not into a railroad, don't pick this. Pick Curse of Strahd. Pick Storm King's Thunder. I don't like Storm King's Thunder, but I mean it's open-ended, I guess. Out of the Abyss, kind of, but not really. I don't like most of the pre-written modules except like 3. And Tomb of Annihilation is pretty all over the place. This is probably the most fun adventure for a DM that I've ever seen, because it gives you a shitload of stuff, and it's like, do this, have fun. In a Nakey Jakey video, he took a large box full of Lego, just random pieces, and then he took out one of those pre-made sets that you get and compared the two. And Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the first one, it's a massive bucket of Lego. And you just put them together and you make whatever. And it might not be as well assembled, because sometimes as a DM you just make stuff up whenever you want and then it starts falling apart. But you know, it's a sandbox for the DM. And it's a sandbox for the players. And it's a railroad sandbox, which I don't know how they pulled it off. To start this adventure, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need this. You're going to need this for everything. It's your best friend for everything. Player's Handbook is the best. It's got all the rules, it's got all the classes, it's got all the subtypes, it's got all the races. It's got a lot. So I'll put that there. Then, you'll also want this bad boy, and it's very wrecked because I use it as a mouse mat. But yeah, this has most of the stat blocks that you're going to need for, like, oh, there's a goblin in here, oh, there's a Kenku in there, whoa! And I mean, there's a lot of just people. You're going to encounter a lot of people in this campaign. But this is really handy, and you need it. The module also says that you need the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide. I have not had to use it for it. Who knows? Maybe I'll run it again and realise I really need it for the one villain that I choose. And then finally, you need this sexy thing. You need it. Alright? Get the flipping book. This thing, it's where you see the adventure. And in comparison to most of the books, like I'll put them up here, you'll notice that it's not as big. But it's thick. It's thick in content, despite it. I mean, it's A4 as well, so keep that in mind. You don't see too many 224-paged A3 books. It's pretty fat. Also, the book comes with this handy bad boy, which is very useful to give to players, to just give them a bit more context about, you know, where they are. Here's the... Let me do this. This is the player's version that I'm holding upside down. This is the one that you'll show your players, and then you look at the back of this, and then you realise that it has all the secrets on it that only you are privy to. I mean, you don't need this, but it's cool to have. That's all you're going to need. Other than that, some dice, some mates, that's what you need. So, today's episode, we're there. We're there. We got there. I won't do that again. Today's episode is going to be about the good old Yawning portal. It's quite a famous starting spot. It's the most famous D&D tavern, probably, that they've made. I think so. They have 2 adventures where it's referenced. And basically, it is big old 3-4-story tavern with massive old hole in the centre that leads into a death dungeon. It leads to the Undermountain, which is very cool. Which can be explored in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which I've ran like 2 sessions of. And it's decent. It's not as good as this. It's a bit of a weird transition. But you know, it's good. There's a lot going on in this bloody place, including the start of the adventure, which I will talk about in the next video, which is going to be the actual thing that happens. But this is just for you running it, because the players, knowing this as the biggest and best tavern, are going to come here several times, and you're going to need to know what the heck is going on in there. So, there are a buttload of people. I'll talk about them now. There is the Undermountain, which everyone strongly recommends they don't go into until level 5 for plot convenience. And there's a few sketchy things going on, and there's bar fights, and there's a troll, which you'll talk about. next video. So subscribe to the channel, like the video, post notifications, all the jazz. I'm a professional. So I've written down a total of 8 people. And the book gives you 7 at the start. That's a mystery. You'll find out in a second. Keep watching. So, first one. Durnan. Look at that guy. He's fucking cool. He got like big ass arms and he's a bit of a baldy. You wouldn't believe he's a human. He's like 200 something years old. He's pretty cool because he went into that Undermountain that we talked about earlier, and he's probably like the only person that's ever managed to get out. And he's quite legendary for it. He's basically a 20th level fighter. He gets 4 attacks around, and he has a big old great sword. He's got boots, he's got a ring, he's got magic items out of his arsehole. And he's also kind of a dick. If you're a human and you expect to die at like 60 and you live to 260, you're probably going to be pissed constantly. And whenever people go in and ask him about, oh, how's the weather? What's nice to see in Waterdeep? He just kind of probably one-word answers them. I'm not telling you how to run the character. You could make Durnan a super chill bloke, but the book's like, nah. You will find out later that Durnan is in fact a very chill bloke. But doesn't seem like it. He just wants to serve his drinks. He wants to run the tavern. Oh yeah, did I mention he runs the tavern? Yeah, no, I didn't mention that he runs the tavern. He runs the tavern. Next, Bonnie. This chick's cool. She's a waitress. But there's more. Turns out, she is a doppelganger. They're like shapeshifter thingies. This ugly bastard. This is this. Bear with me. Doppelgangers can take all sorts of forms. They're like the changeling race for you Eberron freaks. And she's got like a gang. She's got a gang. And she is working, making an honest living at the Yawning portal, and just trying to make money for her gang. Doesn't pose any threat to the characters. She's just there to chill. That's not even me joking. However, later down the line, there might be a quest that players get depending on which alliances they choose, where they might have to go and tell her to leave. Which, if you look into it more and the players realise, kind of sucks, because she's basically a person who just so happens to be a doppelganger. Well, she's pretty neat. Kind of mild-mannered, friendly, I imagine quiet. Again, these are your people to play, not mine, because this is your game, not mine. This is Wizard of the Coast games as well. But more importantly, your game. Next up is Matrim 3 Strings Merag. So, this guy is sexy old bard, big old human bard, and he sits in a tavern, and you guessed it, his loot is actually a gun. No, it has 3 strings. So, that's his thing. And he's not that good with the loot. Unless he is. Who knows, maybe he makes 3 strings work. But, he's just kind of a bad bard that sits in the tavern most of the time. But there's more. Turns out, he's a spy for the Harpers, and he keeps an eye on everything. The Harpers I'll talk about a bit more in the next, not the next episode, but in an episode. And they're a bunch of bards and wizards, and they're all like spies and stuff, and they make sure that everything is well kept, and they sometimes operate in various other places. They're kind of like the MI5? Is that what they are? Oh, bloody no. Laura, correct me. Yeah, he's that guy. A way you could probably use him, because the first 2 are not going to come and approach the party or whatever. This guy might, because he's a spy, and he is looking for bad guys, specifically the Zentarim, which I'll talk about in a second, or the Zentarim, depending on pronunciational preferences. But yeah, he might interact with the party, and it's important to note that some of these people will and some of them won't. Like, Bonnie might approach them and be like, how do you want a drink? Because she's a barmaid. Durnan won't approach him. He won't care. Until maybe they're like 8th level, and then he might care. But that's not going to happen, unless it does. For whatever reason. Might find out. So, after him, he's probably my favourite, Jalester Silvermane. Look at this guy. He's chill. Like a 40-something bloke, just sits in a tavern. He knows quite a bit about the place. Pretty nice. But there's more. Turns out, he's a spy for the Lord's Alliance. That's actually run by the big head honcho, the Open Lord of Waterdeep, Lyrol Silverhand. And Silvermane Silverhand. Oh. They fucking. Nah, I'll tell you why. Jalester, sad times, lost his boyfriend about a year ago to like a gang brawl in the streets. And I mean, he's nice, he's a bit quiet, And he is a spy, but he doesn't act too much like one. He's obviously on business, and he's still a businessman. But if he's approaching the party, it might be because he gets a crush on one of them. And that's fun, and you can work with that. So, he reports to Big Head Honcho, Mrs. Lyrol Silverhand, and he's probably going to therefore alert Mrs. Head Honcho that the party's doing things, whether they're good, bad, whatever. And therefore, she's going to know what they're on about. Therefore, you can just chuck her in at any point. She is very much, and I'll talk about her in another episode, because she is a fat NPC with a lot to her. She's very much like an adventurer. She walks around the streets. She will probably talk to random people, and she might just pay them visits at random points personally with no bodyguards, because she's really OP. Like CR 18 or some shit. We'll talk about her more later. But Jalester might end up being their main contact for the Lord's Alliance later down the line, and he's kind of fun to throw at the party. So if you want to do that, do it. Next up is Meloon Wardragon, which is the fucking most metal surname that you've ever heard. And then this is the guy. This is kind of friendly. Big ol' flamboyant, charismatic, lovely, stereotypical big ol' fighter man who is a member of Force Grey. You should join sometime. You know, sort of thing. That's the voice I'm going to do for him now, because I don't know, that's pretty cool. But there's more. And you'll notice that with a lot of people, because about half the people in Dragon Heist have secrets. Which is so cool! Because then the party can be like, whoa, we solved the secret, we're cool! And then they normally are, because they solved it. Meloon, he's a chill dude. And he's not a spy. Well, he is a spy. He's a spy for the Xanathar Guild! A beholder. I'll elaborate. So, he's a member of Force Grey and is, you know, chatty, and he's nice, and he has a brain with feet in his head. An intellect devourer. This. It kind of controls him, and he still acts like his normal self, but he will actively try and tell adventurers to not go into the big well in the centre of the tavern, because that's where all the Xanathar Guild do their operations. And he's being kind of puppeted by this brain that works for the Beholder. And I'm going to talk about Xanathar in a video soon, because I intend to use him as a villain at some point in the future. I have used every single villain. I've only used 2 of them, but in the 2 Dragon Heist games that I'm going to be working on a bit, I'm going to be using the other 2. Yeah. And Meloon might become an enemy, which is sad. If they kill him and then bring him back from the dead, it's pretty cool. Also, as a fun little thing, he has an OP legendary magic item that he can't use. It's called Azure Edge. It's, I believe, a great axe, and it's super OP and it's cool as fuck. But because of the Intellect Devourer and the fact that it's sentient, it doesn't want to attune to him. So he's just kind of holding on to it. And that's a decent sign to the players that something's up, where they might see him when there's not many people in the tavern at that point, and he's sitting in a corner, and he'll just be like holding the great axe and just staring at it for ages. Something. Because normally if you mention something out of place, players go do that thing, which I'm quite happy about, because then you can steer them in the right direction. But sometimes you just want to bring it up passively to foreshadow something later, and they suddenly walk right over to it, and they're like, problem? Fix. And I mean, it's good, because they're playing the game. Meloon's pretty fun. You can use him at the beginning to perhaps say hello to the characters and introduce Force Grey and be flamboyant about it and be like, Force Grey is the most amazing alliance in the entire universe. We are the best. Don't go into that fucking well. Something like that. Next up is Obaya Uday. She boring. She is a cleric of Walkeen, a priest of Walkeen, who's basically a god of good fortune and stuff. She likes her money. And she's there for the money, and she is there to sponsor adventurers that want to yeet themselves down the well. So, if you run Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and the adventurers do indeed decide to yeet themselves into the well, she'll be more useful there. I'm not going to say too much about her here, because honestly she's kind of crap to use in this one. She can say hello to the adventurers and talk about money with them, and maybe even strike a deal. At some point in the adventure she could be perhaps used to like trade off the magic items they don't want, or she could be like their banker, something like that. So you can use it for that, but one specific thing that you need to know about her: she likes money. And if the players give her enough money, she might just do whatever. So, you know, it's a fun thing to use. There's a lot of... It's a proper sandbox thing. Also, this is the first NPC I've mentioned in a while that doesn't have a butt actually, because she really is just a priest of Warkeem wanting money. Next up, Yagra Stonefist. She could deck any of us. 7-foot-tall half-orc lady that chills in the tavern and challenges people to arm wrestles. But there's more. Turns out she's a member of the Zentarim, which I mentioned earlier. It is an underground organisation hosted and owned by the recently somehow revived, which I'll talk about later, Manshoon, a big old wizard. And he is kind of the leader of this organisation. And they are part of the Black Network, so is the Xanathar Guild. And basically, they're racing to get the big old 500,000 gold, which is the main incentive for the adventure. Which I probably should have talked about earlier. She's a member of them. She doesn't probably actively involve with them too much. She's regularly seen picking bar fights and arm wrestling, and that's a ruse mostly. She wants to do it because she's bored, but also she's doing it so that she looks more inconspicuous when she's actually being a bodyguard for one of the head honchos of the Zentarim. Davil Starsong. Look at him. This guy isn't mentioned in the original text for all of them, but he's the reason Yagra is there. So I kind of thought it was fitting for him to be in the tavern. You don't have to put him there, but otherwise I don't think Yagra has much of a point in there. And honestly, Yagra is the main person that needs to be in there because she's in the first encounter. Davil is a Sun Elf bard who is good with his words, a really good diplomat, and he does business deals and gets contacts for the Zentarim. Party might get pretty affiliated with him since he's gonna, if they want to join the Zentarim, he's gonna be their main contact. He's a member of a bunch of people. Laura, I'll tell you what they are in a bit, and then you're gonna put the text over my head and it's gonna say what the people are. So Davil is part of that adventuring group who are a bunch of morally ambiguous adventurers that go and kind of do whatever. He's one of the less douchey of them all, he's just neutral. But doesn't have a problem with, I don't know, punching some random guy because you don't like him. So, that's all the people in the portal of Yawning, the Yawning portal. And that should be mostly what you need to worry about for running it. Next episode, I'll be discussing the actual encounter that happens, how to integrate your party into it, and how to properly get the game running and kick off the chapter, A Friend in Need. It's one of my favourite introductions, and you'll learn why in the next video. So here's an outro. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to click all the buttons that you're supposed to when you finish a video, like all the other people tell you to. And run this. It's very cool. I should have put that in my notes.